Okay. It's 7 o'clock. Let's call the ARB meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Corral.
Here.
Schneider.
Here.
Orson.
Here.
Cabrera-Wosick.
Here.
Cavazos.
Here.
Okay. We got a quorum. Let's move forward. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now on to the minute approvals. We got two sets of minutes, one for our work session and one for the regular meeting. We'll start off with the work session.
I make a motion to approve the work session minutes from December 11th, 2018.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Last chance for any type of updates on it. We good for corrections? Okay, put it up for vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We'll move on to the regular meeting minutes.
I was absent, so.
I move to approve the minutes of the December 19th, 2018 ARB meeting. Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Last chance for any type of corrections. Put it up for vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstains? One abstained. Okay, next agenda item is citizens' time. This is a time for citizens to give the ARB any feedback outside of the COAs. So if this isn't associated with a COA that you've submitted, you can come forward, give your name to the podium, please.
Thank you. I was very pleasantly surprised to know that this is my first time being in a town hall meeting of any sort. And I was very pleased to know that citizens were welcome to come and make comments because my name's Mitzi Stern and my husband Jim behind me. We live over in Dominion Valley, and my husband and I moved to Virginia about 2 years ago. And when exploring locations in the Northern Virginia area, we honed in on Prince William County and Haymarket. We were so excited to move here and visit Haymarket, which is advertised as everyone's hometown. After we arrived, we visited Haymarket, and I was very shocked and disappointed when I saw all those horrible-looking buildings at the intersection of the main area. There's at least 6 to 10, and they look like they should have been condemned or torn down many years ago. Nearly 2 years ago, well, we moved here 2 years ago, and so after that, nothing's changed since we became residents. Getting to know the area, we visited all the small historic towns around, you know, Marshall, the Plains, Middleburg, Leesburg, Upperville, Aldie. Never have I seen buildings in such condition in any of those lovely towns. And I asked myself, why is that? And why has the town of Haymarket not done anything about the dilapidated buildings in everyone's hometown? So my purpose here tonight, I could go on and on about my feelings, but I hope you get the gist of why I'm here. I'm very sad to see that condition in everyone's hometown. My purpose tonight then is to ask, I understand there's a blight ordinance been passed. I was told it was about 2 years ago, whatever. I'd like to know what power, if any, does that give the town to do something? And the second question is, what is the government here are there plans to do anything about those buildings? And if not, just tell us. And the last thing is something will be done, kindly tell us what and when we can expect it. So thank you very much for allowing me to share my opinion.
Okay, thank you for coming forward.
Could I say something then?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, we don't normally engage in a back and forth with the public during the citizens' times at any level, any body of the government, but what we usually do is refer folks to staff and have the staff get back to them with answers to their questions. So that's what I'd recommend you do.
Okay. Just to repeat what our consultant says here, if you address your questions with the staff, they should be able to give you some type of response. If it's timeframes on when things are plan on being addressed or not.
Is there a particular staff person?
Lady over here.
Call me again. We can set up a meeting even if you'd like.
Okay, anybody else for citizens' time? Okay, we'll move on to our agenda items. First one is the demolition permits for the Smith property.
We're on packet page 8. You'll have my staff report regarding the demolition permits for the property across the street. Just to go back over for everyone and also for the public, we have 7 structures that are located on the block across from Town Hall. We'll go through a presentation with pictures later on in the evening, but the addresses are as follows: 15001 Washington Street, 15003 Washington Street, 15011 Washington Street, 6707 Fayette Street, 6704 Jefferson, 6706 Jefferson, and 1501 Payne Lane. Back in December, we had a work session meeting with the applicant's attorney, at which point we went through a map and all of the different structures. The board discussed some of their concerns and comments on each individual structure, and we took time that evening to discuss the historic value that the board saw in the structures, as well as the current condition of many of them, as well as their accessory sheds and proposed ideas for what should happen in the future. The applicant has provided in tonight's packet a permit for each one of the structures. The ones that have sheds are attached accordingly to the main structure. So the brick building, Big Fred as we call it, has all of the shed structures, white structures that are built onto it on that same permit. And there are some smaller sheds, a brown one that is attached with the Payne Lane home. That's the home that has no roof currently. And again, we went over all of these at our December meeting. Also with the permit request are the narrative, which you will find later on in the packet, with the survey that our previous building official, Joe Barbeau, completed back in 2016. You'll also find a letter from myself to Stan Smith back in May of 2018. This is when we started with the new blight ordinance requirements, and we went through the process. So this has been an ongoing discussion for quite a few months now. And then you'll also find attached several survey documents that the applicant has submitted for the 3 structures on the property that are considered historic due to their age of over 50 years. And those would be for the one here on the corner of Washington and Jefferson, 15001. You'll also find it for the Colonel's home, which is the grayish-blue home that has a fence around it right now. That's 6707 Fayette Street. And then you'll also find one additional one for the other white structure on the corner of Jefferson and Payne, which is 6706 Jefferson. In here, you'll see detailed pictures of the conditions of the structures, as well as we discussed the other historic survey documents that were done back in '86. The other thing I wanted to add that I did put in my staff report is in the recent weeks and months, I've received a lot more commentary from the public via email through our new website, as well as phone calls. I would say on average I get 2 to 3 a month, which before November I didn't receive many at all, but it has really been a big push in the last couple of months of what's going on. A lot of the citizens are very concerned with just how it makes our town look and how the characteristic of our town is diminished based on the properties. And there's still a large discussion out there on the public safety. I also put in my report here, due to an incident last week, I've asked the chief of police to come and talk to you guys tonight and do a little presentation on what happened over there with a missing juvenile being able to get into the structure. So if the board is okay with it, at this point, I'm going to ask Chief to address you.
Fine.
Okay, I'd like to, hello board, my name is Kevin Lands, I'm the police chief for the town. I'd like to go over a couple of my concerns tonight, focusing on public safety for you guys. I want to start with this building where it is the most unsecured building that we have on that block, as at 6707 Fayette. This is the front of the house, and you see they put a fence up around it, supposed to secure the structure. You can see on the sides it's grown up, and the fence is overgrown at this time. You can see right here where the roof is starting to collapse on the porch. You can see where the sheet metal on top of the roof, the metal roofing, is starting to peel up and is flapping. I'd like to point out that right next to the structure is a preschool, and there are children that play near this preschool. Just in the summer when we had a storm, we had a metal roof come off of one of the buildings in town, and I had to have people, my officers, secure the street to keep citizens from being injured by the flying debris. This is about to that point. If we have another big storm, this is going to come off, in my opinion. And we're going to create a situation right next to a preschool that is very dangerous. This is one of the columns right here that is supposed to be here supporting the structure but has fallen down. This is a replacement column that was placed here by somebody. You see that they have gone through the bottom of the porch and have created a hole. I guess tried to cover it with this, but that's holding up the roof at this time. Right here, I want you to see in this supposedly secured, fenced-in structure, this great big gaping 4-foot or better hole that anybody can step through. This building is not secured at all. Here's another picture of the fence line that is down, and you can just step right onto the property. Also at another location, you can see the fence is not secured at the bottom rail. Anyone can pick that up and go underneath. Back to the porch where you have the structure, the pole that had fallen down, that's right here in the picture, was sitting on this board that was holding up this part of the porch. When we walk on there, everything moves. It's very spongy. It's very scary when you're walking on it. Here's the broken window and the completely unsecured front door, which is a problem because, as you can see, you can easily get into this property. The fence is not fencing in anything. Here's the front door that's all out and exposed. Some furniture on the inside that we have found people on at times. Here's beer cans that are strewn throughout the house. I've got multiple pictures of that with evidence of people in the property. There's evidence right now in the snow of footprints of people being coming in and out of that property. So this is not something that happened once or twice. It happens on a daily basis here. Here's the roof coming in. You can see from the bottom floor all the way to the top in that hole. This part of the roof is completely gone. The stairs are very rickety, and once you get up there, you can find evidence of beer cans and people up there all the time. So that's just the one structure that I want to talk about tonight based on an incident that happened this past weekend. And I can tell you that when we check this, if you're a juvenile, you don't weigh as much as a 250-pound police officer walking around, so it's not as spongy for them. But when we go in there, it's very dangerous, not just for people, but it's dangerous for the officers to have to go in here night after night after night and check these these blighted buildings for security and safety. So I want to start tonight with the reading of a police report from last week. On the night of January 10th, we received a call for a missing juvenile. We were dispatched to Foster's at the request of the Prince William Police Department, who were looking for a runaway, suicidal female who lived outside the town. The juvenile ran away from her home. The female was reported to have been at Foster's with some of her friends. We checked Foster's and were unable to locate the juvenile. We spoke with some of the juvenile's friends who were in the area looking for her. They stated that she often hangs out in several of the abandoned buildings with other kids in town. They stated that she spends most of her time in the abandoned house at Fayette and Payne. We checked all the abandoned buildings and the several others. We checked that abandoned building and the several others on that block, as a Fairfax helicopter was overhead checking the area as well. We found easy access to the house at Fayette and Payne through large holes in the fence. The floors and stairs appeared to be falling in and were extremely unsafe. We found that most of the plywood in the building in the area, on the other buildings in the area, were falling off as well and could easily be pulled open. We found a hole in the perimeter of the fencing and made easy access. The friends of the missing juvenile stated that it is not common for kids in the area to hang out in these buildings on this block. We spent several hours checking rooftops, parks, cemeteries, and other secluded locations in town. The juvenile was not located in our town, and as of the writing of this statement, she is still missing. That was our police report on January 10th. Unfortunately, the next morning, this juvenile was found deceased by suicide at some time during the night. And although her suicide did not happen within the town limits, based on the accounts of her friends, it easily could have. As your police chief, it is not my job to take sides on political matters such as you're talking about tonight. I don't have an opinion on that part, but I will speak to you based on what I am tasked with, and that is public safety. For far too long, this town and the owners of the several blighted properties in this town have been content to allow structures to deteriorate into a state of danger. Danger to passerbys, danger to children, and danger to the public in general. And I'll tell you why I say this. Much of today's policing is based on a theory that I completely agree with. That theory is called the broken windows theory. It states that tolerating minor physical and social disorder in a neighborhood, such as graffiti, litter, and blight, encourages and breeds crime, which, if left unchecked, leads to serious crime. Now, luckily in this town, your police department does not deal with an excessive amount of crime. That is due to, in part, the hard work of the officers of this department. In turn, this allows us to be more present within the community, and we have been keeping a lid on serious crime that surrounds and thrives in a blighted environment. However, despite our best efforts, we cannot be everywhere at every time. It is evidenced by the statement of the girls' friends that we are not able to catch everything. Blighted structures lead to crime. There's no question about it. We have way too many blighted structures here, and I am imploring you as the ARB and you as a representative of the owner of this property to find a solution to this problem. If you pride yourself on being a walking town, then you need to take the necessary steps and make the hard decisions to fix this problem. Blighted structures lead to crime. Small crime leads to big crime. Can you imagine how you, the representative of this town, or you, the representative of the owner, would feel right now if this juvenile had killed herself in a building that she was able to access on a blighted property in this town? I implore you to allow the owners to tear them down or hold the owners accountable to secure them, one or the other. I take no position on it. I'm just asking that you help us, as the police officers of this town, fix the problem. What you're doing now, in my opinion, is not working when it comes to my field of public safety. And that's all I have.
Thank you for your input, Chief.
His PowerPoint. Okay, next I have a presentation from the applicant's attorney, Brian Prater, who was with us at the December work session. Just give us 1 second to pull it up on the screen, please.
Which one? The hearing.
Just let me know when you want me to advance it for you.
This one?
Thanks.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the Architectural Review Board. My name is Brian Prater, and I'm with Walsh Colucci, Lubelai and Walsh, and we're here tonight for the Payne Development property across the street and the certificate of appropriateness applications, demolition permits. And we're here to seek your approval to demolish all of the structures across the street. And before I get into the specific structures, I just want to explain the situation here. My client, Payne Development, Stan Smith, as you are familiar, bought the property back in 2005 with the hopes of redevelopment. That did not work for a number of reasons. Business partner, as well as 2008, 2009, the recession hit, things weren't getting built. And as a result, he was left with a property that was not producing anything, that with buildings that were falling apart, had been falling apart long before he had acquired them, and was looking to market and get out. And he's still in that position. He's trying to sell the property so that he can move on and get away from the property. But over time, he's come to learn that the buildings on the property are an issue for marketability. And he has been unable to sell it. He has tried to work with developers, and they either, I believe, want the buildings torn down first or approval of the demolition. And it's been a major hindrance, and he just seeks your approval to tear them all down. The second point I want to make before getting into it is we're seeking to tear down your approval to demolish all of the structures, not 1 or 6 or 7. It's all of the structures. There's 7 applications. We have 9 structures identified in the applications, which we will get into later. And the hope is just to get this property into the hands of a developer who's willing to develop this property and revitalize this downtown area, this town center across the street from Town Hall. And he's been unable to do that for over a decade, find a developer that's willing to sell it. Last point, I just want to clarify that we are just representing him in the capacity of the demolition permits and past violations that he has had. We are not involved in the negotiation of contracts, any communication with future developers. That's not our role in this. We are simply here to seek your approval for demolition of these structures across the street. And this is just an aerial of the structure, or of the property. It's 5 parcels in total. This is Big Fred's garage. This is an accounting office. This is one of the 3 historic structures, which you have an engineer's report on, structural engineers. This is 6704 Jefferson, Nagassam, and Casella paving. This is another one of the corner properties, which you have a structural report. This is the Stone House, and this is another. This is 6707 Fayette, and then there's a little former car dealer's office in here that's boarded up, and then a shed. The property is currently zoned B1 Town Center District. The intent for this district is to provide retail shopping and personal services for residents in the area, and it is also recognized that there's the economic value of the existing historical area, and it encourages the retention and or rehabilitation of the structure. Right now, it's not meeting the intent of this, obviously. This is in the town plan, neighborhood town center. And this calls for neighborhood stores, offices, restaurants, which we submit that if our client's able to demolish these structures and properly market this to a developer, this will be able to achieve the town plan of a neighborhood center with offices, restaurants, shops. Here's just an aerial that references how I've referenced these in the applications themselves. The ones you see here in yellow were identified as ones that Emily, the zoning administrator, was given administrative approval to permit demolition. And we have said, and I believe Emily put in her staff report, that we still request that you vote on those. We don't believe that the state code gives her the administrative authority, so we believe and respectfully ask that you vote on each of these. These 2 are in the same application. That's 15010 Payne Lane, and these two are in the same application, and that's the Big Fred's garage. So another thing, and I have for you, one thing we came across this afternoon, and Emily, if you want to pass out these packets, these are architectural surveys that were done in 2012 by the Virginia Department of Historic Resources. These were done in association with the I-66 and Route 15 interchange potential designs. And these are just the forms. We believe that there are reports that are associated with these. We have not been able to get those since we just found out about these this afternoon. But we imagine that at some point the town was made aware of these or given these. And the first one on the top there references 15010 Payne Lane. And this is an old residential home. You can see most of the roof is missing. And as you can see in that report, it states the Virginia Department of Historic Resources said that there is no known association with important people or events. The design and workmanship are indistinguishable, and the materials stock. And then it says it is considered a non-contributing resource to the Haymarket Historic District. And you will see that language in each of these. Next. This is a shed that is behind this property that is overgrown, is not serving any purpose right now. This is the car dealer's office that is behind Big Fred's garage, boarded up, not in use at all, and is also serving no purpose. And this is Big Fred's garage, which is the second of the architectural survey forms in your packet that was just handed to you. And this is an old garage. I believe the tax assessor's office says that this was built in 1930. And I believe that this VDHR report confirms that. And it is inoperable. You can see that it's falling apart in many locations. And once again, the same language, that there is known association with important people or events. The design and workmanship are indistinguishable in material stock. And that's associated with the application of the car dealers. That was the previous slide, which Emily was given administrative approval, which presumably means that they're not at issue for approval of demolition. This is the accounting office. It's being used as an accounting office right now, and it is in not the greatest shape, as you can see, and there's a tiny little building overgrown in a lot of locations. This is what is currently, this is 6704 Jefferson Street. This is currently an office being used as Gossam and Costello Paving, and this is one of the newer buildings, as I understand, and I don't know how much of an issue this would be for the town center if this was no longer in existence there. Okay, and this is the Colonel's house. This is 6707 Fayette Street. This is the house that the chief of police just showed a lot of pictures, so I won't spend a ton of time. You can see the condition of it from his presentation previously, and there was also a structural engineer's report that detailed the status of this, several large holes in the roofs, the roof is coming off, there's sag and deflection. Remediation for this would essentially require this to be stripped down to its core, the interior framing, just to see if anything was salvageable. And that's not even sure that it is. And the structural engineer's report says that it is clear that it would be significantly more cost effective to tear this building down rather than try to rehab it. Another point I would add, on the 1980 survey that Emily provided in the staff report, states that this building at that time in 1980 was already deteriorating because of neglect. This was 25 years before Stan Smith acquired the property, so it was in bad shape long before he was involved. And you can see these are just further pictures. This is 15001 Washington Street. This is, I believe, known as the Payne House. This is not listed on the town's historic building list, which is Appendix D of your historic guidelines, nor is the previous Colonel's house. And this is also a structural engineer's report, states that this is in very bad shape. There's several holes beneath in the sills. If you go to the next slide, you can see there's holes, and it's rotting. And once again, this would take a significant amount of structural remedial work and would likely have to be removed, stripped down to its core to determine what is salvageable, which we believe is an unreasonable financial burden to ask of our client given this status of these buildings. And this is 6706 Jefferson. This is listed in Appendix D of your historic buildings inventory list as the Gossam House. This has roof leak, rot in various places. The vegetation has overgrown it. To remove the vegetation itself would probably tear off quite a bit of the building, as is seen in the structural engineer's report. And this would take a significant amount of structural remedial work, similar to the past two. New studs would have to be added, would probably need new joists added to the existing joists. And once again, this would have to be stripped down to the interior frame to assess how severe the damage truly is. And the first floor addition, the structural engineer's report states that this may not be economically salvageable and would be more cost-effective to tear down and rebuild. And then and just given the state of these buildings, we recognize that the Architectural Review Board's job is to look at historical and architectural significance of buildings throughout the town, and that's why the ordinance was enacted. But we think you need to balance between the architectural and historical significance and the potential redevelopment of this area and safety concerns that were highlighted earlier. And we would respectfully request that you approve demolition of all of these structures so that we can get this moving in the right direction and hopefully find a developer that's looking to redevelop this property. Thank you.
If I might, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
If you would.
So I just wanted to go over a couple of things that we went over when I did the training last month with regard to where we are in the analysis of whether to grant a certificate of appropriateness for demolition. And the criteria that are set forth in the ordinance include, and specifically call attention to a building to be raised in Section 58-14.9, parens 6. It says, in the case of a building to be raised, a primary consideration will be the extent to which its continued existence would tend to protect irreplaceable historic places and preserve the general historic atmosphere of the town. So that's an easy call for most of these structures. They're not really contributing to a general historic atmosphere or protecting irreplaceable historic places. Obviously there's a range here, and some of these houses may have more architectural and historic interest, but none of them have been identified as being associated with important historic personages or historic events. 14.9, 58-14.9 goes on to talk about the general welfare. In paragraph 7, the extent to which the building or structure will promote the general welfare of the town and of all citizens by the preservation and protection of historic places and areas. I think in looking at promoting the general welfare, you need to view that in terms of health and safety as well, as well as historic preservation and how that fits in with economic development. Economic development is also concerned in subparagraph 8 of that same section, which talks about the extent to which the building or structure will promote the general welfare by A through H, A being maintaining and increasing real estate value, and B being generating business. Currently, those properties are not generating any business and are not maintaining or increasing real estate value. They are, in fact, decreasing real estate value until they are remediated or demolished. Your guidelines then talk about demolition guidelines. In the Architectural Review Board design guidelines talk about needing a compelling reason to demolish a historic structure. The compelling reasons that have been presented to you for your weighing this evening are the economic hardship of having to rehabilitate these buildings and the public safety risks associated at least with the colonel's house. You also have, in this case, structural analysis of some of the buildings as called for under the guidelines, and you have the ability to impose some conditions. Let me talk about those conditions that are listed in the guidelines. The first one is a complete professional photographic documentation of the interior and exterior of the building, including black and white print and digital images. To the extent that some of these buildings have features that you would like to see repeated or imitated in the buildings that would be built there, which obviously have to come back to you for a certificate of appropriateness to be built, then some documentation of what is on there now be helpful in your future deliberations about what COA should be granted for on that property. The second condition is Phase 1 archaeological survey of the property. Staff and I had a conversation about this. We're not aware of any basis for finding that there might be an archaeological site of interest there. You know, the whole property, the whole town was burnt in 1862, except for a couple of buildings, and to our knowledge, nothing has occurred on that site that would have archaeological significance before or after that. The third condition that's listed in your guidelines is the applicant must demonstrate that the site will be prepared and maintained in accordance with the landscape plan once the building has been demolished. There's really no basis for that because there's no landscaping on the property right now that has historic significance. And landscaping is addressed in your site plan ordinance, so there will be, whatever is built there will have to have a landscaping plan in accordance with your current ordinances. And then the last condition is the demolition may occur only following receipt of a building permit for the new construction. I'd suggest to you that's inappropriate under these circumstances, under most circumstances, in fact, but particularly under these circumstances, because the town has already found the property to be blighted and has asked for the remediation plan from the property owner. So a further delay in this situation would not benefit the public health, safety, and welfare. So that's my 330,000-foot view of this. Obviously, you are the experts in terms of the historic features of these buildings, and the initial weighing of those factors is on you. I would just ask that you think about the countervailing factors that have been presented here tonight.
I have a question. I was reading through your criteria when you're referring to the criteria in terms of raising properties. You had said to the point where it would tend to protect irreplaceable historic places or preserve the general historic atmosphere of the town. You were suggesting that these collections of buildings do not have a person, place, or thing associated with them, or
I'm not answering. I'm not saying that they don't. Let me back up and try not to use a double negative.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that primary consideration will be the extent to which each individual structure tends to protect irreplaceable historic places and preserve the general historic atmosphere. So it could be one or the other, protecting irreplaceable historic places or preserving general historic atmosphere. Those are factors for you all to weigh. It's just that I'm struck by how there's not been anything indicating that there's an irreplaceable historic place that it's protecting, or any indication in the staff report or otherwise about how the preservation of these structures would preserve the general historic atmosphere of the town.
okay, you reference like a person or event.
And that's, yeah, so that was in context of the surveys that we just got from the applicant that were done in connection with the interchange through the Virginia Department of Historic Resources. There's no known association with important people or events.
Okay.
That's where I got that information.
And we are to assess the economic value and feasibility of the project.
Certainly, that's one of the issues that you have to decide whether there is a compelling reason to demolish the structure, and that the economics are part of that analysis.
And then, I didn't mean these questions to be disrespectful.
No, that's fine.
The other question, in terms of the town's ability to address blight once a demolition permit is approved, the COA for approved demolition permits for a year. I do have a concern that somehow strap hangs or limits the ability of the town to then step in and address health, safety, and welfare. So are there tools available so that if we do approve the permit for the Colonel's house to come down, is the town still able to go in and address that?
Yeah, there are a couple of tools in the toolbox for that. One is that you've already started down this path of requiring a blight abatement plan. If that process would need to be restarted at this point to get the requisite number of advertisements in, but we could do that and require them to provide a blight abatement plan, which could be demolition or rehabilitation of the structures. That's one tool, so that's the blight abatement tool. Another tool would be for the building official, the property maintenance code official to come in and say that this property needs to be demolished now. And so in that case, we could demolish it. Even in that case, it's, it is important to have the ARB's input. I'll just relate one quick story. When the earthquake happened in 2011, there were buildings in Culpeper that were affected by that, and they filed, the property owners filed for a certificate of appropriateness for demolition. It was granted the same day, and the ARB held its meeting out on the sidewalk in front of the building. So, there's nothing to say that the ARB doesn't have a say in that. It's just that when you have a health, safety, and welfare emergency, you really have to respect that.
What prompted the question is several folks that I've talked to about these applications seem to feel that because it's an ultimatum of kind of all or nothing, that the owner may get frustrated and just walk away, and we're left still having to deal with these buildings. So I'm just wanting to reiterate that the town does have tools to be able to step in and address this.
Correct, that's correct. Yeah, we can require demolition of some or all of the structures based on those tools in the toolbox.
Can we require the demolition in a certain time frame?
Yes, so if under the, let me take those tools one by one. Under the blight abatement plan tool, we would require a plan for abatement of the blight, and that could be, as I said, demolition, and then it would have to be done within a reasonable period of time. Under the property maintenance code, there's also a reasonable period of time, but it tends to be a quicker reasonable time. I mean, once the property maintenance code official says this building needs to come down, it tends to come down right away. And so that can, if the property owner doesn't do it, the locality can step in and demolish the thing and put a lien on the property for the cost of demolition. So there are a number, as I say, a number of tools that are available to us to encourage or require a timely response.
Are there any more questions for Martin?
Not for Martin.
Okay.
Have you spoken with anyone on town council or ARB about this
Yes,
outside of the meeting?
yes.
Okay. Do you mind disclosing who you spoke with and,
Earlier today, I spoke with Mark Grant,
okay.
I was going to disclose that later.
Okay.
So,
and that is it.
And no one from town council? Okay.
So just to confirm, your stance on this is pretty much all or nothing, right?
We are seeking to demolish all of these so he can move forward. And
Okay.
another question. In terms of feasibility, was there any documentation regarding the economic feasibility of either one or all or a combination of any of the structures on the property?
outside of the structural engineer's reports, no, there have not been. That provides a brief look into the economic feasibility, but not detailed.
If you want me disclosing real quick since Councilwoman Cavazos brought it up, I did want to disclose that at the last meeting I disclosed that I received a call from Art Miller, who was a broker working on a potential purchase of the property. He had talked to me about, he previously contacted me assuming that I was still in my former role as the town planner. He also was asking me to relay the conversation the ARB had had because he had gotten feedback from Mr. Smith, the property owner. I did receive subsequent phone calls, and what I did offer, and again, as an individual person, would Mr. Smith consider withdrawing the application for the one structure that's listed as contributing, that being what we call the Gotham House, in exchange for agreement on the rest of the demolition. with the premise that that would obviously have to be the agreement of the group. But would that be one possibility? This was under the premise, Mr. Miller was saying, you know, how does this get done? How does Mr. Smith get out of committee? I said, well, you know, the general discussion seemed to think that there might be a denial of the Cossum House. You know, the easiest way to get out of the meeting tonight, you know, if you get approval of the demo permits, is withdraw the application, and then you carry on. Mr. Smith, Stan Smith, I had met him initially when the town had finished these two properties. I was asked to reach out to him in my role as a planner to begin the blight, and that's when he immediately put it up for sale. He called me 2 days ago, again asking, relaying his conversation with Mr. Miller. I get said, Mr. Smith, would you consider a scenario whereby one would be withdrawn? Mr. Miller had indicated that preliminarily he might be able to incorporate that structure in the back, given its location, its proximity, its siting on the site, as part of a future development plan. I relayed that just that would be my suggestion, or as perhaps a solution. It deals with the public safety, deals with repositioning the property for economic development, and also meets the goals of the board, which is to adaptively reuse properties. Mr. Smith, I called Mr. Smith again this morning and said, is this something you're agreeable to? He said, I will talk to my attorney. Mr. Prater called me this afternoon, indicated that he had advised or worked with his client, and that the general agreement was that the best position for them was to move forward with their current request. There was some question about when they could establish their rights under the state code, whether that was a denial of the ARB or a denial from the governing body, which is the council. But the intent would be to have the option to establish that right. Is that correct way of accounting for it? So it was a very candid discussion. I appreciate his candidness. I also called Chief over the weekend. I read the report and did reach out to him saying, could you talk with me your concerns about the property? And we did relay the same information, or talked about the same information that he presented this evening. So those are my disclosures, Mr. Chairman.
I have another question. Has your client spoken with anyone on town council or ARB besides Marchant?
Outside of that communication, I'm unaware of him speaking with anyone else.
Mr. Chairman, would it be helpful to review the statutory process by which the by right demolition can occur, just so everybody's on the same page?
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay. So what Mr. Schneider was just referring to is that once an application has been made and denied, that a property owner has a right to demolish the building if they market it for a period of 1 year at a value that's reasonably related to its fair market value to somebody who's willing to preserve it. So in that circumstance, once the denial is final, they can put it on the market. They would need to tell us what the asking price is and demonstrate that that's related to its fair market value. And they would have to list in the marketing materials in a MLS listing or elsewhere that it is being sold for preservation, and the person buying it would need to agree to preserve the building. If after that 12-month period nobody's come forward to buy it on those terms, then they have a right to demolish the building, and we would have to document all that on a going forward basis to make sure that we all agreed that the conditions have been met and that the time had come for that demolition to occur by right. So that's just so you know what the process is. That was one of the things we covered at the training, but it's also I just wanted to reiterate that for you so you'd have that fresh in your minds.
I'm sorry if I missed your point, but is it the point that that it gets appealed to the council and the council denies it, or would it be the start date from when we if we deny an application?
I think it'd probably be from the ARB, but don't hold me to that.
Not a big deal, just a question that I come up with my discussions with Mr. Prater.
Yeah, I haven't given that a minute's thought, but my initial reaction would be because the statute says that it's denied, it would be from the ARB denial.
Also, what constitutes a fair market value as something? Because clearly, he's trying to sell it, so he clearly wants to profit out of it.
Right.
So, is there like a governing body that dictates that, or?
So for fair market value, there's actually a good bit of agreement in the literature and the field of property appraisal about how it's done. And one of the agreements is that people are going to come up with different figures about what something's worth, because you can look at any property and pick comparables to sell and compare it to and say this is a value. And there's different methodologies for assessing it. Briefly, there are three main methods of appraising property. The income method, if it's income producing, which wouldn't apply here. The comparable sales approach, which would tell you based on whether it's value based on what other things have actually sold for recently. And then there's the replacement value. And so with the replacement value here, you would be looking at, what would it cost to buy this property and rebuild it, less the depreciation. So, there are a number of methods that would that would apply, and there's whole books and manuals written about this process. But it's something that the town would have to then work out with the applicant as to whether we agreed that the number they came up with is really reasonably related to the fair market value.
If I may.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to add that my client, the applicant, is not going to be making any sort of profit on this business venture of buying this property. I just wanted to clear that up. He will not be. He's trying to sell it, move on with this. He is taking a financial hit, to say the least, on this property. And then the other clarification, just with the statute, it says he has applied to the governing body for such right in referencing to demolition. So it does not specifically say denied or granted. Granted wouldn't make sense, obviously, but it just says applied for such right to the governing body.
Okay, good to know.
Does Mr. Smith, or how quickly is anticipated that approved demolition permits would be executed?
I think that he would want to move pretty quickly so that he can, but I would have to check with him on a timeline. We wanted to see what your conditions would be, and if that's one of the conditions, I would speak with him very soon and get a time frame on that. And I think, as you understand, he wants to move on with this property. I don't think if he got the approval to demolish these that he would wait.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? I think we're at a point to address each COA. Everybody agree?
Mr. Chairman, I distributed the cheat sheet from last month. I didn't put the COA numbers with it, though.
Yeah, it's probably best to hit the hardest property up first. Would everybody agree? And that would be the Gossam House. That's in the historic registry.
If you do it that way, you'll want to go to page, I was thinking you would do it the opposite way, so I didn't order them that way. Give me just 1 second.
Page 37.
Thank you. Actually, I'm sorry. The three historic start on 26. When you say Gossam House, are you referring to structure F? Okay, yeah, from 36, 37. And on packet page 9, I've given several draft motion ideas for you. Obviously, you'll need to put in the address and then the appropriate zoning permit number, which I can help you with as we go through them.
Chairman, I think that the applicant's representative can sit now, right?
Yeah,
During this
if
part.
you want to relax, if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand, and I'll...
Just the last thing is, the applicant is willing to entertain conditions, specific conditions that the town attorney mentioned earlier. He was just unable to agree or commit to any specific conditions because he needs a clear list of conditions in order to review the feasibility and cost associated with those conditions moving forward, namely phase one archaeological, which the town attorney said does not appear to be an issue here, but I just wanted to clarify that he's willing to entertain conditions.
Okay. Okay, I open up discussion.
Mr. Chairman, just so we can keep the record clear, this is on 6706 Jefferson Street, zoning permit ZP 2018-067, is that correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Chairman,
Notes on my
do you want
phone.
a motion first before discussion, or no?
I would say let's open up discussion here, because the motion would end up having to be changed depending on if it's approved, denied, conditioned.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll open up discussion on this first.
I read a letter at our town council meeting, and let me go. I'm just going to read a few notes again that I wrote in that letter. In an effort to preserve and protect historic places in our town, I feel that while some of the buildings mentioned may be beyond repair, some are worth preserving for future generations. Our town's charm and character will be erased with its architecture if we fail to protect its last remaining historic structures. There are a few possible alternatives to demolition that the applicant could consider. Rather than selling the property with all of the current structures, the applicant could separate the property into parcels, allowing an opportunity for buyers who may be interested in purchasing the existing structures with the hopes of preserving them. For this particular structure, I'm against demolition. I feel like it is not beyond repair. I know that it would take a lot of repair and renovations, but I do feel like this is one building that we really should work hard to protect.
Okay. I guess I'll speak my piece. For this building, okay, with response to the three conditions we have here, we have history, we have general welfare, and we have cost effectiveness. History, all I can say is, well, it's on our registry. We don't exactly have any names associated with it. There was a discussion when we restored the building on our property out here on whether it was truly had a historic figure of the town in there or not. But besides being on the registry, a lot of the detailing of the porch detailing was used in defense of keeping this property here. I think we can use the same defense with this piece of property because the structure seems to be stable enough. And it does have the gingerbreading on the porch, and when repaired, other details could be added to it. When it comes to cost effectiveness, well, we already have a model to show for cost effectiveness. We've restored this. We're showing a profit on keeping it rented, and we do have people available right off the bat when we said we were going to restore it that wanted to rent the property. I think the same model can be used for this one when it comes to economic feasibility. For general welfare, well, we did catch it under the blight, so it is shored up a little bit. There's a little bit of shoring. In our work session, we discussed how, yeah, vegetation has kind of overtaken the back addition add-on, but it was understood that we would allow that to be removed and just stick with the historic structure. But that's kind of outside what's going on here. I just wanted to discuss the three priority things that we need to address when we make our decision. And because I feel we do have models that can show cost effectiveness, especially since not only that, it's on the corner of the property, so it's not interfering with any of the other pieces of the property. That we're not totally restricting what can happen with this property by offsetting this since it's in the corner. Because of all these, I would probably agree that I would say that this one is worth saving, and I would vote against the demolition permit.
I actually had a question, Chairman, if I could address the chief about whether or not this property is also, if we know if people are also going into this property as well, or is it just the one property that we know to be a consistent issue?
People have been in this property as well. They've secured it a little more than the other ones, but you can easily pull the plywood right off the windows and go inside. Some of it's already coming off on its own, but not off completely.
Because I think that's something that we need to address is the welfare of the public. And, you know, we know most of these houses are dilapidated, deteriorating, you know, rot, and among other things. I think we could probably use one of the tools that we have for archaeological survey, for a phase 1 archaeological survey, and the black and white photographs as well as digital photographs that we were told about, to address the issue of preserving the architect of the house, and using that for future reference for other properties that would come up, because that would still come to us. I think we still have that ability. I'm for the demolition.
I'm sorry, just to confirm, you have had confirmed entry into these buildings, for this particular building?
And I would like,
Yeah.
may I add to that, just until their structural engineer came out and did a survey on it, the front plywood was easily accessible, it was not secured, and it was flapping. So somebody could easily step in and go through.
That was because I forgot to screw it shut after the last building official went in there several years ago. I was told to do that and didn't do it. That has a front door on it. I believe all the buildings, all the windows, last time before the boards went up, there was still some structural integrity to it, but you know, whether there's a lock on the front door, I think you could easily pull that plywood back and you probably could reasonably push through that front door. But that, I'll take the blame for I've been in the structure. I was in the structure with the building official and the prior architect that was asked to assess the value of the building. And again, when the guy ran out of screws and asked me to come back and do it, and I never did it. So that's why I came on. So, I have some comments, of course. Anybody else? Julie, did you want to say something before I go into my diatribe?
Go ahead.
Okay. So, I'm aware of my chattiness. Okay. I would agree with the chief that both, speaking to the property overall, that both the landowner and the town bear responsibility for the current condition of the property. But I do find it, I find it hard to reconcile in my mind, given the charge of the ARB, that she accept a total scorched earth, that this entire southwestern quadrant of our historic crossroads, except for the museum, should be accepted for demolition. I wanted to read from the recent Haymarket Lifestyle article, which talks about beloved building gets a makeover, talks about the museum. As you drive down John Marshall Highway through the town of Haymarket, you can't help but see the dichotomy of old and new. A bustling, growing community with pieces of rich history sprinkled throughout, old homes mixed in around new homes, and they go in to talk about Winterham, the adaptive reuse of QBE. So I do reconcile in my head, you dismantle that corner, what is the precedent for the future? What are we really left defending in terms of a historic district and its contributing resources? And again, how do we adequately administer our charge? I went through the ordinances as well and some of the surveys. This is great information to have, these surveys that came in. I was the town planner at the time that the surveys were going through, and I had some frustration with this project along with the overhead power lines, that we weren't really being consulted on any of this. So I would like to know how they made the determination that no important people or events or these other statements that are here, given a lot of the write-ups we have about the property, what we know about people that have lived there. Gossams is a well-established family within the community. The garages served a transient public over time. That stone off the back building came off Bull Run Mountain. The Colonel's house was one of the first, Civil War soldiers to reestablish themselves, so, in the town. So, again, this is great information. I wish we had it at our fingertips, but I would want to know for the basis within which some of these statements. I put some findings together based on my assessment. Well, first of all, too, I think in offering the option to as a reasonable compromise, that seemed fair. A lot of the comments that have addressed blight have talked about bringing in small business. I would agree that this property as a whole is dragging down the rest of the town. And I believe by this particular one, in context of the rest, still repositions the property to do something pretty remarkable. This location on the property, kind of the exterior, a lot of the initial plans that I saw had this as a leftover space. I would agree that with these two structures that we rehabilitated, the design, the structural survey that was provided for this building matched almost exactly the condition of these two structures. Required some bracing of the flooring, required repair of water damage. We don't regulate the inside, so for practical purposes, all the drywall is brought down. That's how they fixed from the inside out. I don't know if you remember when that structure, the whole side was falling down, they braced it in the air. But what I would argue is that the cost to rehabilitate those, the current market value would probably well exceed the cost of that rehabilitation. So given the fact that, posturing this property so the landowner can reap the benefit, the town can reap the benefit, the community can reap the benefit, public safety can reap the benefit, it seemed a fair compromise that this one, let's put our heads together and figure out how to do it. But going back to I looked through the ordinances, and I'm of the opinion that this is inconsistent with the stated purpose of the old historic Haymarket Overlay District. The subject structure is designed as designated historic building. This is over 50 years old. Within the old and historic town of Haymarket. The purpose of the old and historic Haymarket District overlay is to protect against the destruction of historic resources such as these. The application is inconsistent with, in my opinion, is inconsistent with the intent of the Town Center B1, and Mr. Prater referenced this earlier. The intent of this district is to encourage the retention and rehabilitation of structures and uses in the district that have historic and/or architectural significance. In this case, encouraging the retention of that property is relieving the rest of the property of these structures and making that a more viable option. In my opinion, the application is inconsistent with the Town of Haymarket Comprehensive Plan. Per Table 16 of the plan, historic building inventory, 6706 Jefferson, historical name Gossam House, is designated historic and worthy of protection in the town of Haymarket. So while we don't talk about necessarily places or events happening with these, we recognize the historical reference. The plan states historic structures are important because they contribute to the Haymarket sense of place and provide tactile, hopefully I said that right, lessons on the cultural influences of the community. The plan also cites historic resources as fragile and non-renewable. If they are destroyed, the loss is permanent. I have a couple more, but I'll be quick. In my review of the historic landmarks brief survey form for the property that we have on hand, the 1890s structure is a simple, fine vernacular house, which has gone very little alteration since its building. The building retains all the character, defining architectural features from the building's period of significance, and is a contributing element to the Haymarket Historic District. The building is an important, if not only, example of Queen Anne architecture that reflects the evolution of a particular building style within the town. I reviewed the same criteria from the ordinance that Mr. Krim reviewed, per the matters to be considered by the ARB, and in the context of 6 other applications requesting to, with the exception of the museum, demolish all structures at the southwest quadrant of the town's historic district, or historic crossroads, the continued existence of the subject structure will protect, in my opinion, will protect irreplaceable historic places and preserve the general historic atmosphere of the town. This structure will be the bookend of the town museum and transitions to town as you come in. The structure's position on the lot contributes to the town historic streetscape along the town's southern gateway. This is the last one. Thank you for your indulgence. In my opinion, the applications do not describe this is per the criteria, do not describe alternatives to demolition, and why, in the context of 6 concurrent applications for demolition within the same block, such alternatives and/or rehabilitation of the building is not considered feasible. The engineering report submitted with the application describes conditions and required remediation similar to other historic structures in the town that have been adaptively reused and are reasonably expected to have a market value that exceeds the rehabilitation costs. First, the matter to be considered by the ARB, these rehabilitated structures promote the general welfare consistent with the listed criteria. So last, and I'll be done with it, in talking to Mr. Miller, his expectation was, well, what would the town expect us to do? And I, again, offering as one opinion on the ARB was to stabilize the property. Get the windows secured, get the doors secured, fix the siding, fix the windows, basically mothball it, and then give us time. The idea of him withdrawing it, he could resubmit at any time, but the idea would be that gives us time to work with potential purchasers to figure out how to reuse it, come to the council, which was my previous idea, on figure out the tools. Do we give density credit? Do we give parking reductions? Do we give economic incentives? Saving 1 out of 9, I think, would give us the opportunity and the time to be able to work with the town. So I'm not as opinionated on the other structures, so I'll say, just to give you a heads up, I won't talk as much on the others, but thank you for your time.
I already made my mind.
Okay. Bond, do you have any more questions?
I don't.
Okay. So if I could get a motion on,
I make a motion to deny zoning permit number ZP number 2018-067.
I second the motion and would, can I offer a friendly amendment or go discussion first?
friendly amendment's fine, we'll get that out first.
Okay. Friendly amendment would be, I've drafted 6 findings that are more or less read. I can provide you copies, but I would suggest that if this is appealed, that this be included with the item. That way there's some foundation for our decision. Is that okay?
I accept that.
Okay, I can pass these out real quick.
Okay.
I should have enough for the audience and for everybody here. Thank you.
If anybody wants to grab a copy. Okay, that second had a friendly addendum. Bond, you agree? Okay. Opens up for discussion. Anybody want to add anything? I just want to make sure that my stuff gets recorded. The 3 criteria that's outlined within the documentation that Martin read was, well, that you read to prepare us for this was the history, the general welfare, and the cost effectiveness. I think we displayed that this falls within all 3 of these criteria. And that's all I need to say. Anybody else? So we'll go for a vote on this. Because I feel this one's a critical one, I'd like a roll call vote, please.
Okay. Correll,
No.
Schneider,
Aye.
Lorson,
Aye.
Cabrera, Wosick,
Aye.
Cavazos.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay. I think that was the fun one. Now we'll go to the other ones. Do you want to go in order from here on? It's probably easiest. Okay, so we'll go back to the front. So, I guess we're looking at ZP 2018-062, 15010 Payne Lane. If everyone wants to look at their map,
It's number
that
D.
is D.
And I have the front facade on the screen up here.
Okay, and that's pretty much the residential house with no roof.
The one that we did give Emily administrative approval to.
Great, I'm sorry, which permit number is this again?
It is going to be 2018-062, packet page 12.
Thank you.
My packet numbers are different from yours.
I'm sorry, Martin, that has to do with the minutes from December 5th were added in after. That's something we'll have to come back and also do a minutes approval on.
I lost it.
Okay, yeah.
Where's the criteria from the design guidelines? Okay, there. Sorry, I'm turning to a back.
I just want to clarify that this application includes structure E as well, the little shed.
This little brown reddish shed.
I'll kick off this one because I felt bad about the last one. Okay, I move, let's follow her example. Thank you for doing this, Emily. It's always easier to use the draft. Okay. I move that the Architectural Review Board approve ZP 2018-062 to demolish the two structures located, to demolish structures identified as D and E in the application materials at address 15010 Payne Lane, with the condition that the applicant work with town staff to provide complete professional photographic documentation of the not the interior, the exterior of the building, including black and white print digital images. Also provide a archaeological or architectural description of the property and any known person, places, or events that may be associated with this. An idea that came up, that'll be the end of my motion, but the idea that came up is that Mary Washington has a program that might bite at the bit to do this type of work, so that would be the impetus. The only other thing I'd offer, is there a consensus on timing?
I would like to
This one
see
would
them
be
within
immediate.
6 months or less.
Okay.
I don't know if we can request even sooner.
So, you don't have a second for that motion, so I don't think it's appropriate for me to jump in
Okay.
here.
Second.
Okay. If I might, then, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So, as I understand the motion, it's to have conditions that the applicant provide photographic documentation of the property and architectural description, and a third thing, which is a description of any important people or events.
Any person, places, or events associated with the
Okay.
property.
Right. I heard you say the word, and I'm sorry, and I'll answer the question in a second, but I heard you say something about archaeological, then you caught yourself and said architectural. You meant architectural, right?
Correct.
Okay, because I don't know of any archaeological issue. So with regard to the timing issue, it seems to be appropriate to have a reasonable period of time for the demolition of this property as part of that motion, and 90 days would certainly be plenty of time. Also, if the applicant doesn't agree that 90 days is appropriate, they have the ability to appeal that to town council and have that town council issue a different time. But you have a representative of the applicant here. He probably doesn't have authority to commit to a 90-day time period, but no harm in asking him.
Just a clarification on that. Emily, I could use your help. So we approved the permit for demolition. All they would have to do is if there's any utilities that have to be disconnected, which I don't think there is, those would be disconnected prior to them being able to move forward.
Right. I'm sure
And-
they've been disconnected for a long time.
It may have to be a friendly amendment, but I think the idea would be is that 6 months would be enough time, or 90 days should be enough time to get this information, the photo documentation, the architectural study, and that be completed prior to the permit coming down. Does that run in a conflict?
No, so basically what you would be doing is adding to the motion a 90-day time frame for the documentation, and then as soon as he's completed that documentation, he would have a period of time to demolish the building, maybe another 30 days. Would that make some sense? I'm just throwing out some ideas here.
I'm thinking 90 days would be plenty for
All of it.
demolition.
Okay.
I think 30 days would be more than enough to have someone come and photograph and take notes and work with the planner if there's any history.
And
You think you could turn around and?
Well, one point to add is also with our building department now being at Prince William County, they will also be involved in issuing the official tear down permits and making sure everything is taken care of properly.
6 months, maybe the more.
Yeah, Prince William will slow us down.
Okay.
I mean, they recognize the fire marshal's been out, they recognize the public safety hazard, so I would.
Yeah, I feel this one is one of the bigger public safety.
Right, so I wouldn't necessarily go out to say that they would slow us down too much there. I mean, you could even say 120 days.
Do we
Gives you
want to
4
do
months.
Do we want to be consistent about, like, because I'm sure they'll want to do it
Do it all
at once. So do we know that, you know, like, this one might be expedited, but do we know if other applications would be, like, slowed down because of it?
Nope, they wouldn't treat any of them differently. It would be easier for them to all come out in one fell swoop.
I think to
It'll
make
come
it-
down to the photographs and the architectural descriptions that will slow it down, I think, the most. So it's just that time frame.
I initially suggested a phase one, but that's a pretty expensive,
I don't think
And drawn out.
drawn out, and I think you talked about it earlier, I don't see that we're in any position to do that. You may have some treasure hunters out there that are gonna wanna look through the property, but for Civil War relics, but other than that. You know, I was gonna suggest that similar conditions be applied to any demolition permit that's approved, so that maybe make it easier going through the rest of them.
I think 120 days
For the
for all of
entire
it.
demolition?
Mhm.
Okay.
I
So,
think,
just thinking about this logistically, let's say tomorrow they contract for the architectural description and photography and the historical research. They get that done, say that takes them 60 days, and then they can apply, because only then would the town staff sign off on the application for the demolition permit, and then they'd have to get that demolition permit issued and the demolisher contractor on site to demolish it within the additional 60 days. Is that's just one possible scenario. Obviously, any combination of dates adding up to 120 would work, but I'm just trying to think about this realistically. That doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room.
I'll amend I don't know how logistically we do that. I'm willing to concede to taking that last part off, just have the photo documentation, architectural description. A friend of mine or a coworker in Loudon, wrote me up this design in 20 minutes. So it'd be more of the photo documentation. So, and again, I would trust with Emily, you probably have some resources out there that could probably do that fairly quickly, so.
Yeah, well, in fact, the description of the historic persons and events could be done at any point. It doesn't require the building to be standing.
Exactly, we can do that through Relic, we can do.
Yeah.
Through that, so. I guess my concern is we have the photographs, but we don't always have the language to describe what's in the pictures. So, and I would think this is important for when they come back to redevelop the property, which is hopeful, and we can use those as a way to maybe talk about incorporating a lot of those architectural features, if possible, into the new redevelopment of the site, so.
Okay. So your initial motion, you've got two amendments to the initial motion that you made. You want to add a 120-day timeline to do the documentation and demolish. You also want to strike the part about the description of historical persons and events. Is that right?
yes.
Yes, as the maker of the friendly amendment, yes, I agree to that, so.
Oh, okay. Just trying to keep it clear for the record here.
We can restate it at the end.
Okay.
I can restate the motion if that's.
Sure.
Okay. Any other discussion or objections to that? I lost my page.
Well, we still need the full motion and
Okay, I will read it back.
second before we go into last chance for discussions.
Okay.
Excuse me for a second.
Yes.
How do I need to correctly make a new motion, Martin? Sorry, before you guys drink.
Oh, thank you. This is what I wrote.
I need to say friendly amendment or,
I would just say,
There's no second. Was there a second?
There was a second.
There was a
by-
second?
so, This would be a motion to amend the previously made motion to rewrite it as the following.
I move to amend the previous motion as follows. Okay. I move that the ARB, thanks for your indulgence, approve ZP 2018-00 or 062 to demolish structures D and E as described in the applicant's materials and located at 15010 Payne Lane, based on the following conditions. One, that the applicant provide photographic documentation of the exterior and a description of the architectural features of the structures, and that documentation be provided prior to the demolition of the structures, which would occur no later than 120 days from the date of approval.
I second the motion.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Last chance for any type of discussions.
So this would be a motion to make the amendment, and
Make
then
the
you would
amendment.
vote on the amended motion.
Okay. So this is strictly a motion on the amendment. Let's go for a vote? Or did you want to you have a okay, let's go for a vote. Although change the initial motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're good. Now we'll open up discussion on the initial motion with the changes. Everyone still good with it? Okay, we'll put it up for vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now on to
What's the next one?
63, is it? 63.
Structure 8, the Fred's.
And that is Fred's.
This goes for
With-
A and B.
This
Yes,
was-
with this application, it also includes this structure here on the screen, B, which is the shed behind it.
This is the one that you had talked about before, wanting to be able to document behind the facade.
Yeah, for this one, the brick is starting to fall off, and you can see that behind it is a fairly well-preserved face of a picture we have documented in, I think the museum has a picture of it. But it would be interesting to see that torn, at least that brick pulled off and a picture taken to archive that on its changes and the modifications made, so like a before and after before we rip it down.
Yeah.
That would be the only added thing that I would want. I don't know, I can't remember, was this a post and beam construction on the inside, do you remember?
I believe so.
That might be interesting to have some pictures of. We're not asking for interior of the other ones, the sheds, but
You're saying if safe to do so, in this case, document the inside?
that would be something
Okay.
that I think would be good for documentation. I don't know if anybody else agrees on that.
Fine.
But,
The only-
yeah, because like you said, this one is definitely the transitive piece of property that had the gas station that.
It was a Gulf
in the-
station.
Yeah, back in the, what was that, the 30s or the 20s? And so that one would have a little extra,
Attention.
would be neat to get that face before and after picture.
I've been in that structure too. There's some, cool beams in there and stuff like that, but if the applicant wants the liability for that. So.
Yeah.
Only anecdote I have is that Big Fred scared the hell out of my wife when she went to get an inspection sticker there, but.
Side
But-
note.
Yeah, sidebar.
Okay, so, yeah, that's the only thing I'd prefer with that piece of property. But it all depends on what everybody else wants. I mean, this is a board decision.
Fine with that.
I think as long as it's safe to go inside and do that, then, yeah, I don't see a reason.
Okay. I prefer not to make a motion since I'm the chair, but if you want, I can make out the motion.
You guys want to try it, or want to give it a try again? Martin, could I borrow your cheat sheet again? Can I have a second to,
Put it together.
I didn't write the if safe to do so on there, so you might,
do we need to put that in there?
Earl's suggestion.
Okay.
I'm not sure who determines what's safe and when.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was just
Do we rely on common sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Do you mind if I write on your paper?
Go right ahead.
And this would be with the other similar motions to the photographic documentation?
Yeah.
No, I wrote some language there already for you. Not that one, the next one down.
No, but I was saying before, we talked about architectural descriptions and photographic documentation prior to the demolition. You're looking at taking a photo of the facade as the demolition's occurring. Were you assuming that other documentation will be made of the property before that happens?
Yeah, that would have been additional to,
Okay.
because I thought we were going to put this across the board.
That's what I was confirming, is that we're carrying forward the previous condition for demolition, but adding these new ones.
For this property only.
Not this one. It's missing the thermostat.
Oh, Chief, turn it down.
Yeah.
Clarify real quick on the motion so I understand.
Yes.
Just to clarify on the motion previously that appears to be included in every subsequent. It was 120 days, but I was unclear if that was 120 days for the three things. That's the professional photographs, architectural description, or that those two things, the original person, places, or events research was no longer attached, correct? On the person, places, or events, that's not included?
Correct.
That's correct.
And then it was 120 days for those to be completed, or 120 days for demolition to be completed, or approval granted for demolition based on those conditions?
For those to be completed and for the demolition.
To be completed as
Yes.
well?
Completed or started, right? Or
Yeah, I
could they
mean-
say kicking dirt around, starting it, right?
Right, so the idea there was that the demolition would be completed within 120 days.
Okay,
So that's,
thank you.
Most sense, sorry.
Marshall, I'll get you some stationery for Christmas.
Thank you very much. I'm with the government, I'm here to help. Usually that elicits a laughter.
Not in this room.
This is building.
A and B,
A and B.
A and B.
I'm going to use an SAT word, practicable. Okay. This is 0063.
363.
This is Washington Street.
Yeah.
Oh, we're on Washington Street. Thank you for your patience. Okay. Here we go. I move that the Architectural Review Board approve ZP 2018-063 to demolish structures A and B located at 15011 Washington Street, subject to the following conditions. One, photo documentation of the exterior and an architectural description of the structure A will be submitted prior to demolition of the structure. Demolition of the structure is to occur no later than 120 days from the date of the approval of the demolition permit. Also, during demolition, photographs of the front facade of structure A, and also any interior photos as practicable.
Second.
That's it?
Yep.
Okay.
Did you mean demolition permit or certificate of appropriateness?
We can interchange the terms where this motion was to approve ZP,
Okay.
the permits.
The zoning permit application, because the demolition permit is a separate building code permit.
Okay,
I think you meant the zoning permit.
So friendly.
friendly amendment that any reference to demolition permit be struck and replaced with.
The CO be struck and replaced with demolition permit, right?
No, strike demolition permit and insert zoning permit.
Zoning permit.
Zoning permit.
Okay.
Okay,
Do you agree with that friendly amendment?
Agreed.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussions on this? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let's move on.
thanks, Martin. I'm gonna need that again.
And that's 064. Which is 15003. Which is the tax hat, or the accountant's hut.
Chairman, the only thing I would kind of shared this before, my knowledge of it, or anecdotal knowledge, is that what was I think a CNP telephone switch. One point was a television repair station, another point was a sandwich shop, and then the latest is the tax office. So,
Yeah, and I'd like to comment on this. There's no true historic value of this, but it has become a landmark in the town of Haymarket. But because of its positioning and the fact that there is no historic value, I think this is easily agreed to be torn down. Okay,
I'm sorry, one question.
yes,
What is the timeline that can I ask the applicant a question?
yes.
Since there's someone still in there, are they going to be able to, is anyone going to move out, or, I guess you'd have to make this decision first, but,
Right, but Stan has indicated that the tenants will be leaving at the end of February.
okay, they're on notice, and they're, okay. Sorry, thank you.
Okay. Any important contributions you want to put to this property before we put a motion out there? Okay. Who wants to draft up this motion then?
We still will have this photographed as well.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think, just a site photograph of the whole property is worthwhile.
I make a motion to approve zoning permit number ZP 2018-064 with the condition that it is photographed on the exterior, and also, do we want an architectural description? Yes. That there is an architectural description made, and that it occurs no later than 120 days from the date of approval.
Got a motion?
Clarification? The way you read it, I think read that it was, that this documentation was submitted within 120 days, but that the buildings come down within 120 days? Do we need to, anyone read that the same way?
That the demolition occurs within 120 days of the zoning permit approval.
Okay.
Second.
Got a motion and a second? Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, move on. property is pretty much the Gossam and Costello construction house that moved back to the old dentist piece behind it. This was one of the three targeted for us to heavily consider. Does anybody have any comments on this one?
This one's tough. On one hand, I would love to save it. However, looking at the inspection report and then also considering a future building on the entire property, I think I'm okay with saving the one that we are hoping to save, and letting this one go so that they have more of an opportunity to build on the property.
Yeah, initially, I felt that this one had value, but like you said, looking at the engineering report on it, looking at its positioning on the face of Washington Street, and also thinking that we do have the opportunity to document this structure and maybe throw that into the architecture of the building that will end up going on there, because I'm assuming they're going to do some type of townhouse structure there. It's probably the only way to partition the building up to have multiple residents, and that I'm probably okay with going with the demolition under the assumption that I give the board that I would be very interested in keeping this architecture on the next building, and to make note of that with the board.
You guys have comments?
I do agree with you about it. When I moved to Haymarket, I visited first during a winter prior to 2001, and I came, my husband was driving me down the road, and he said there was a nice little eatery next door, but I saw this property and I fell in love with it. It's just the way it looked up front with a little tree or bush. This one, I'm very sorry to see it go, but it's far gone. I will miss this landmark though.
This is at our historic crossroads. I used to say that you could stand at this corner and point to every style of architecture following the burning of the town. And it's a good, but at the same time, I think there's some opinions that we should look like we did before the burning. I'm of the opinion that Haymarket continues to reinvent itself. So the opportunity to reestablish this corner as a prominent feature. This has kind of been the icon building, and unfortunately now that the boards are up, it really takes away, detracts from that aesthetic. But a new structure in context with tenants we have in the old bank building, we have all the other structures occupied, I think will really create a lively activity, and really reposition this site to do something quite remarkable. I think the other issue is with the, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, the site plan for redevelopment of this site was going to include a center lane, turn lane, similar to what's done or what's striped at the light right now going east-west. And the idea would be to accept that kind of center lane on the far side. And to do that would be particularly difficult with this building there. To provide that center lane, provide the wider sidewalks that we're looking for in the area. I mean, it'd be really hard to make that work. So I think just as a practical matter, this building has to go to meet that greater public purpose. Only anecdote I have about here, Mr. Gossam used to kind of command his minions from this house. At one point, he apparently sold videos. He had a little VHS operation going on out of there at one point, but a very gregarious man, and everyone used to kind of equated him to the Godfather, where people would come in and ask for Mr. Gossam's advice. So, thank you.
Okay, any more points anybody wants to bring up? Okay. I guess we'll solicit for a motion here.
Harder.
What's that?
I said this one is harder.
Yeah, I know.
I can make this one then. Martin, can I borrow your cheat sheet again?
Of course.
Are we agreeable to the same architectural description, photographic, and down within 120 days? Okay. Okay. This is structure H.
Structure H, ZP 2018-065.
Okay. I move that the Architectural Review Board approve ZP 2018-065 to demolish structure H as identified in the application's materials and located at 15001 Washington Street, based on the following conditions. Photo documentation of the exterior, architectural description of the structure, and that these materials be submitted prior to demolition of the structure, and that the demolition of the structure to occur no later than 120 days from the approval of this zoning permit for demolition.
A second.
Okay, you got a motion and a second. Last chance for discussion. One big breath for it. Wish we could keep it, but hopefully we can keep the architectural structure in the next building. Okay, let's put it up for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thanks, Martin.
Okay. Moving on.
Almost done?
Almost done.
The next one's the Colonel's house in the packet, 6706 Fayette. It's structure C on your map.
This one to me is the saddest one. I thought this one had the most detail, but as we've seen with the documentation today, this is just totally unsafe and totally weathered and deteriorated to even think about keeping up. I'm a little disappointed. Wish I could blame it on the owner for his neglect, but it's past the point.
It is. It's very sad.
So,
I don't know if most of you have seen this, but if you look at the original photograph of the house, it's heartbreaking. I mean, this was a beautiful structure. This was listed in the Sites and Structures of Northern Western Prince William, which was a publication put of all the ones. If you indulge me, I'll read real quick. Urban in style, this is a large two-story L-plan frame weatherboard-clad house. It's typical of many of the homes that once existed in Old Manassas. The front section of the house is 3 bays wide with a central entrance. The one-story column porch across the front is supported by tapering columns with iconic capitals. Absentee-owned, the high-ceiling interior has been split into 3 apartments. Though it is in deteriorated condition, this is one of Haymarket's most visible turn-of-the-century residences, and the other surveys speak to the similar. So, with the right owner, maybe this could have been done. You know, Bond, I'd hope with your parents' interest when you first moved in, may have taken a go at it, but I agree with the structural integrity, the public safety, and it would be really hard to develop around it. So, I'm going to agree with demolition.
any other comments before we throw this up?
Would like to say a few comments perhaps later about some of the other buildings in town that we really need to focus on, because I feel like there's going to be heading in this direction soon.
Okay, we'll bring that up as another item in new business. How's that
Thank you.
for us to focus on? Okay, so we'll go, I guess, start a motion on this one. Do you need your cheat sheet? Who wants to do this one? You seem to be the primary,
I've gotten criticism that I tend to monopolize this body. I hope that's not the case. Okay. Where are we at?
66,
Page
31.
31. Bond, unless you want to do it?
Go ahead.
This one was kind of dear to my heart. This is structure C?
Yes.
Nothing else with it? Okay. I move that the Architectural Review Board approve ZP 2018-066 to demolish structure C identified in the applicant's materials and located at 6707 Fayette Street based on the following conditions. One, photo documentation of the exterior of the structure be provided, an architectural structure or architectural description of the exterior be provided, that these materials be submitted prior to demolition, and that the demolition occur no later than 120 days from the approval of this zoning permit for demolition.
I second the motion.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Last chance for any discussion. Okay, we'll put it up for vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Chief, let's hope this gets resolved soon, buddy.
Second is done. So 68.
The only one thing I do want to note kudos to the applicant is I realize these inspections weren't inexpensive, so having these materials was helpful for us with which to make our decision. So I know Mr. Smith's probably listening right now, and hopefully he's not too frustrated, but we do acknowledge the time that was, at least I acknowledge the time and effort that was put into putting these together, so thank you.
The next one, we already did 6706, so we're on packet page 43 with ZP 2018-068 for 6704 Jefferson. Which is structure G, the yellow building, yellowish.
One anecdote I'll have about this building is Eddie Platez, who owns Gossam and Costello. His mother once worked in the Gossam store here, and I guess at one point they took aerial photographs of the whole corner, and he had them displayed in this building, in his office. And I'd asked if I could go and scan those, and we're able to submit it to the town and have electronic copies of it.
Okay.
But this is before the addition on the bank building, before Long Street Commons was even built, back when all the lean-tos were on this building. I mean, it's some pretty neat documentation, so.
Great,
Other than
thank
that,
you.
it's kind of unremarkable. I mean, it's utilitarian. It kind of speaks to kind of the utilitarian nature and the kind of this at one point, this was kind of the, simple nature of the town, so.
Yeah.
I make a
Comment?
motion.
Good.
Okay. I make a motion to approve zoning permit number 2018-068 with the condition that it is photograph documented as well as architectural description, and that the demolition is completed within 120 days of the zoning permit being approved.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Last chance for discussion. Let's put it up for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Is it?
I think that was it. Yep.
Chairman, just some closing thoughts on these. I would hope that both the community and the council and the police force and the residents appreciate the significance of what these decisions are. I feel we've been equitable and fair in our evaluation. Hope that this is not seen as a precedent for future properties, although we'll likely have to address in some fashion. And my hope is that moving forward, the town will respect, maintain, preserve, and continue to find ways to adaptively reuse these historic structures, and that we're never in a position again where we're being asked to accept demolition as the only option, so, thank you.
Okay. And I would like to thank you for the time that you've put into it. You were here at the work sessions with us, and hopefully we can move forward with a positive motion.
Yes, and I just want to thank board members, Chairman, for all the time and effort you put into this entire application process and the history of this property before this avenue as well, so thank you.
Thank you.
They say not to do that.
Okay, now we'll move on to the next agenda item. The next agenda item is a new chairman discussion and appointment. Through consensus, I guess,
We want you to stay as chairman.
yeah,
Exactly.
which I'm happy to do. I just didn't know if you guys wanted some new life. As you saw, the effort that Marchant put into tonight's stuff with the research he's done. I like seeing his energy and passion. And I didn't know if you
Absolutely.
guys thought that might help with the direction of where we're going. I'm glad to stay. We don't have to put a vote on it tonight then, but I would like to say, when we do address the bylaws, that we do address, not a term limit, but address a term in which somebody stays in which we readdress whether we want to go through a vote, just so that we do have an opportunity to refresh instead of end up getting into a stagnant or a stale mundane mode of an ARB or something, to
Yeah.
keep it fresh. But that'll come
Keep it
up.
fresh.
Yeah, that'll come up, I guess, when we do discuss bylaws. I think that's going to, I think there's a spot in here on the Old Town business for that. Is that correct, Emily?
And I think also if anybody ever is interested, like Marchant, if that was something that you really wanted to do, like, please tell us and, okay. Because I'm happy to have Ken or, anybody, but if Ken's happy staying, I'm thankful for the guidance and direction that you give us, so.
Well, like I said, I saw energy here,
Yeah.
and I didn't know if we wanted to
Sure.
put it into where we might get more done, just because of new ideas.
I appreciate it, but my wife would not. She already thinks that we had some colorful conversations about this. No, based on my professional practice and what I do, this is generally a good best practice to go ahead and reaffirm the leadership from time to time, if not specifically required. And I think it gives the community confidence that, people are changing around. Most groups tend to switch the chairman and vice chairman from year to year, but I'm comfortable reaffirming your leadership and tutelage.
Okay. Well, we've already burned up 2 hours, so I want to try and speed up this agenda a little bit. So if there aren't any more questions with that, we'll move on. Okay, we'll move on to old business.
I would actually like to pass out the December 5th meeting minutes for approval that missed the print agenda that I had. It was on the electronic version, so it's just a one-page, it was the work session minutes that got added in late, so I apologize for that. But if you guys are willing to act on them tonight, I think it'll take you just a minute to
That'd be fine.
review them.
Yeah, I think you did, because you got the.
Yes, we added them in after, and we already printed, and I didn't want to waste paper, so. I think you guys would have all gotten it electronically on Saturday morning.
I was trying to figure that out. We got like multiple emails all of a sudden.
Yeah. I was
So
wondering about that,
I'll
too.
explain that. I got them all through my junk mail, so did Shelley, and it's the first time that's ever happened. So Saturday, we were rushing to get it back to you guys, and we didn't see it, so that's why you got about 7 of them. So I'm sorry. We're working on that issue.
I make a motion to approve the work session minutes from December 5th, 2018 for the ARB.
Second?
Okay, got a
No,
motion.
I can't second, I wasn't here.
I think you still can.
second.
Mhm.
Second?
You can still vote on it for that
Yeah.
matter.
Got a motion and a second. Any last-minute discussion? Okay, let's put it up for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye, sorry.
Okay, no voice from you, Marchand, so I
Sure.
waited for you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's been done. Any more old business?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, go to town planner update.
Yes, so I would like to request that we bump the February meeting date up one day. I have a scheduling conflict that evening, I apologize, but would you guys be available on the 19th at 7?
Let me check.
As well, because I will be out of
Or the
the
week
state
prior?
for that week. But,
It's a Tuesday.
Yeah, and again, I apologize, I had scheduling conflict with a
No.
trip and didn't realize it.
I will be out of state until the 19th as well. So any day after the 19th I can do, I don't mind.
Okay. I'll be out of office the 20th through the weekend and returning the following Monday. The week prior, we have the 12th is open, the 14th, and then we have the week after as well.
I'm leaving from the 12th to the 19th.
Enjoy your vacation.
Thank you.
Yeah, 14th is a no-go.
Okay. Do you guys want to look at the week after?
What's our regular meeting? Oh, that's the 20th.
20th.
It is the
Yeah.
20th.
19th or 12th is good with me. If anybody wants either of those days.
19th would be my preference.
And currently, right now, we just have one application that will be before us, and it's on the Brick Rambler here on Washington Street for the wine tasting room. But that's all I have right now. I don't expect much else to come in between now and then.
Oh, that's what's going in there. Took the shed down behind it, didn't it?
It did, yeah.
I can do it on the 12th. I am available on the 12th.
So,
That's fine with me, too.
the blue house that's right up on the road that's boarded up.
Okay.
There's two Ramblers right next to it. The Rafferty's own them. One's a roofing company, and the other one, they're gonna do a,
Yeah, it's been purchased by the Mirais Vineyard.
the
So
garage,
we'll-
the garage came, they took the garage down a little while ago.
Yeah, so I'm assuming that the design will change then on that building? Because I know we approved something that I don't think was put in
Correct, so
place.
they want to come in and bring a new facade change and build out the facade and have a different kind of wall structure and some arches put in.
The 12th would work for me, too.
I'm available both days.
I will not be here. My flight, I leave at 12 o'clock on Tuesday, so,
Well, as long as we got a quorum, so.
Sorry, Ayush.
no, not at all. Because I don't even know I don't remember what time my flight comes back on the 19th, so I'd be tentative either way.
Okay.
Yeah.
What works best for you, Julia?
The 12th.
'Fine.
12th.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I won't schedule anything next time. And that's 7, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The only other planner update I have, so obviously Monday night, our meeting got canceled due to the office closure and the snow. So you have the draft bylaws. I'm going to put it as a discussion item on the meeting of February 12th so that we can go through them together. Hopefully, you guys, if you have any comments or suggestions, can you get them to me prior to the meeting? I can have a red line version. We can pull it up electronically. But I was hopeful we could make a decision on those and go ahead and move forward.
That only puts the burden on you, Ayush. Is it going to be up on Google Docs, or do you just want him to
Just for the
email
bylaws,
something?
if you look at your agenda packet that you had for Monday night, and if you have any comments, you can send me an email. It's also electronic. Either way, if that
Okay.
works for you.
Now, the bylaws, I think Emily said she had found an earlier version that the ARB had looked at, so this was just recycling that.
Yeah, so it was a version, it looks like the planning commission bylaws were being changed, so they were kind of adapting the planning commission as new ARB ones. So I took a couple chunks out of there and just reworded some things, but it's relatively the old working draft.
Okay.
Emily, do you also want to mention the vote, or the presentation and voting?
I can or you can, either way.
Okay. So we are going to be working on the sign package. Emily and I met today to discuss about having the money appropriated and how much money we would need for the signs. And so we discussed at our next ARB meeting, I would put together a PowerPoint focusing on the 4 smaller signs, like the shapes, colors, font, all of that. And hopefully at that meeting, we could finalize at least a sketch for us to give to a designer to, to put it out for bid. Does that sound okay to you guys?
Will it include the pole
Yes.
design too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I didn't know if we're going to try and reuse, the existing poles, or if we wanted to go specific.
So we can talk about that
Yeah.
and narrow that down.
Real quick, what existing poles would you be referencing?
Well, like, one of the concepts was you can keep the Town of Haymarket corporate limits and just piggyback a sign on top of that,
On the-
of
Like
course.
the utility pole down at QBE, that one?
This would be on Jefferson Street.
Okay.
It's pretty much the standard U signpost.
Okay.
Just make sure we're going to go separate pole and, the design of the pole.
Mm-hmm.
We'll discuss that.
So at that meeting also, we'll probably have, we've been talking about how much money the different projects would cost and how much money we're hoping to pitch to the budget meeting for how much we would need for this year. And so what we discussed is that we probably would want to do it in sections, and since we know more than likely where the 4 smaller signs will go, we would focus on that first and making sure we have the money for those this year. Since the larger signs, we'll probably have to figure out where they're going since we're running out of room. So, are you guys comfortable with that? Focusing on that, the 4 smaller signs first? Okay.
Okay, that's pretty much it for the old business. Move on to Planning Commission update.
I wasn't there at the last one, so if
Do
you
you
don't
want me-
mind, yeah.
Yeah, so last night we had a meeting with the Planning Commission. The applicant for the property down here near the railroad tracks where the white home is coming down, they came in with their site plan, so they're approved on the condition that they just meet Katie's few outstanding comments, and then they'll be moving along with bringing in the architectural designs for you guys to look at. Those are the 2 homes that, it's a single home right now that'll be coming down. The 2 lots were on Jefferson, fronting Jefferson, and have since been turned to front Fayette. So for a little bit easier in and out with the driveways and safety. And then we also had the Crossroads Village Center site plan on the agenda last night as well. So we discussed general parking, traffic flow, and lighting concerns within the site, and just how some things were going to work back and forth between the 2 different commercial nodes up front and then the way the main drive was. So that was about everything we talked about.
Was there discussion about a traffic light going in at that corner, or a possible thought of that
Which corner?
for the, I guess, crossroad,
So there's discussion of a traffic light going in at Costello Way, and then across the street on the fairgrounds property is where the main entrance is going to line up. So that was all part of the traffic impact study. So once they start building and they have the justified in uses and all of the flow, they'll go back to VDOT for their traffic light study.
Okay, I didn't know if that was part of the Planning Commission as well, or not, strictly the traffic study?
Is there a phasing? Are they going after the residential first or commercial first?
Right now, they're all coming in together.
Oh, cool.
They want to do, they have 4 main commercial buildings laid out, and they want to go ahead and do those 4 commercial as well as the residential, and then they have several pad sites that they want to prep. but it sounds like those pad site plans will come in very quickly.
Question has on this planner report, never mind.
What was that?
No, I was going to have a question about behind Winterham, the parking lot there. Are they about ready to wrap up?
Yep, she dug out the necessary holes for her lighting, so that was right before the snow. I don't know how that affected the project, but they are putting the lighting in right now, and I believe they have final pavement done, striping, and then they'll do landscaping in the spring.
Now, that back parking area, it looks like it's partitioned off from,
It is. So she purchased the property and has partitioned it off for the use by Haymarket Iceplex specifically.
okay, I didn't know if it was specific to Haymarket Iceplex or if it was overflow for the Piedmont Auto and Tire, because their
Since-
parking lot's packed and it's overflowing into the
It's going to be for
roadway.
both,
Okay.
but the general intention of the parking lots for Haymarket Iceplex during game days and the weekend rushes.
Any more questions for Planning Commission update? Okay, Town Council update.
The town council meeting was on January 7th, and we announced the Deck the Doors contest winners, as well as the Mayor's Volunteer of the Year Awards, which went to the Dominion Women's Club. And let's see, the police department announced that they are going to hold the Officer Down Memorial Ride, which will be on April 27th. We're really excited about that. Chief Lands, do you want to say a couple of things about it to the ARB?
Okay, just let me clear some things up. It's not the police department throwing this, we're just supporting it. It's the actual Officer Down Memorial Foundation is throwing this. We're going to throw our support 100% behind this with supplying officers and whatever they need. It's going to be a group of motorcyclists coming into town to participate in a poker run, and we'll have events there. I think they're going to have bounce houses and beer garden and food and things for the kids and awards. So it should be a pretty big event. Previously, it was held in Dominion Valley in the parking lot of Lion and Bull. So it's a very big event. We're lucky to get it into the town. It should draw a lot of people here. And we're working with the organizers there to make sure that it's an easy transition for the town and its residents, as well as a good event for them.
Thank you.
Good.
We also voted on, let's see, the ZTA for the funeral home and crematory definitions, and those were voted to be approved. We also voted on the SUP for the funeral home and crematory, and those were also approved. Let's see. Oh, the planning for the park was presented by Emily, and it was beautiful. And she's going to go back, I guess, and research just a couple other options for different pricing and designs. And the Haymarket Day event date was, we decided to move it into October versus in September, since the October date, because of the hurricane this year, everyone preferred the little bit of cooler temperatures and it being a little bit later in October.
Speaking of the April 27th Officer Down Memorial, I know that usually follows close to Earth Day. Are we having Earth Day this year?
So this morning, we had an events committee meeting, and we decided that we will not be holding Earth Day or the Health and Fitness Day. We are, however, going to look into doing a spring beautification or cleanup day in May. We will also be holding a Stars and Stripes summer concert in conjunction with the HPD car show. and we're hoping that that'll be at the QBE property. We still need to talk with them about everything. If it's not there, we'll work it out to be at our town park. And then later on in August, we're going to have another end of the summer back-to-school concert for kind of ending things off and getting everybody ready for the new year with school. And then we'll have Haymarket Day on October 19th. So all of those new events will be posted on our calendar online. And then we also have set a standing events committee meeting. So if anyone's interested, it'll be the second Wednesday of the month here at Town Hall at 10:30.
Any more questions, or
Mr.
I'm
Wren.
assuming you're done, right? You-
Yeah, whenever I have an opportunity, I'd like to just bring up a couple of buildings in town. Are we doing new business next?
Yeah,
I had one random question real quick.
okay.
The landscaping around the Tesla charging stations, which they look good, by the way.
I've been seeing like 3 to 5 people use them every
Oh,
time I
yeah.
drive by. It's been great.
But the landscaping around the structural stuff that'll happen once the weather is
Yes,
better?
once the weather gets better and they'll survive through the cold, they're going to put them in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I inspected that area. It looks like it'll probably change on the sheets side, because if you looked at the boxes, they are pretty close to the sheets curb. But I'm assuming it'll still stay the same on the outside, the exterior. So we should be good.
And I'll keep an eye on that. I'll circle back with them to see when they do the landscaping, how it changes.
Yeah, well, it didn't turn out as ugly as I was afraid it would, and that was my biggest scare, is not being able to compensate for how ugly the hardware would be.
They make it look really nice.
They
The
do.
hardware itself is really sleek.
It's different than what they've shown. It was an improvement.
Yeah.
I think that probably Gen 2 then,
Yeah.
for the chargers.
But even still, the vegetation will even improve it more.
Yeah.
Okay, is that it? Okay, we'll move on to your building identifications.
I just wanted to bring up Madison Corner Shops and also the building next to it, because I know that the owners own both. But those have been just steadily declining, and I walk by there, I mean, at least 3 or 4 times a week. And so I just want to make sure that whatever we can do as a town, as an ARB, if there's anything I can do to support, we really need to put the pressure on them to start rehabilitating or strengthening whatever we can do. I do not want these buildings to, be neglected so much that they're coming to us asking for a demolition. I do not want that. They're both beautiful buildings. They both are in a great location, especially now that the businesses have moved into the 2 brick buildings next door. This is a great opportunity for, a new business. And I hope that the owners, listen and are open to breathing new life into them.
Is there anything in terms of what ARB can do with preventative measures that we can support the owners with? As far as
So the next step, I would say, is going through the blight ordinance, sending them letters. I think there's been friendly discussions previously. I myself had friendly discussions with them, and that hasn't received any good feedback. Right now, they weren't quite interested in working with me on trying to get a new business into the Madison Corner Shops location where it's currently closed off. And we have some abandoned sign structures from their old business, so I think the next step is going to be the blight ordinance.
I was trying to think, do we have in the ordinance, Emily, something about demolition by neglect? Do we?
Mr. Chairman, I could answer that question.
Please do.
58-14.12 is deterioration by neglect, and it provides that no owner shall allow property in the historic district to deteriorate to the point where it's not economically feasible to repair or restore it. And the process is that the town building inspector makes a determination that it's violating the property maintenance code, and then the town building inspector will notify the owner, the zoning administrator, and chair of the architectural review board of that conclusion. And then there's a process that goes through to fix the property or demolish it.
Which
We
kind of
have
aligns with the blight
town's
ordinance.
building inspector, so we would need to have the county.
Yes, but we need to, and Martin, please correct me if I'm wrong, adopt the property maintenance code in order to call in Prince William County Building Department to come inspect them.
That's correct.
Is there anything we can do to help you?
The council would have to adopt the property maintenance code in that
The town
situation.
council?
Correct.
What do you think, like something that we could send as an ARB to them saying,
To the town council,
no, to the owner? Is that what you were thinking? No? Okay.
whatever
To
steps
let
we
our,
take.
I mean, is there something we can do to, I mean, I guess the blight ordinance is to have them know our intention that we want them to start
Maintaining the
maintaining
property.
it, so I guess, I mean, like Emily said, I guess that's our next step, if that's what we want to do. In terms of like letting them know that that's what we want done, I guess, or like that's what we're looking at.
I think one idea maybe to take the list of contributing resources we already have, map those, and then that be kind of our aggressive, to your point,
Push.
go after those and say, these are contributing resources. We're more than happy to engage you on potential options to, redevelop it.
Emily, can you see if we can add to the next town council agenda to see if we could adopt that?
The maintenance code?
Yes.
A quick story about the Pardos. Miss Pardo, her mom ran the shop out of the Madison Corner Shops. She owns the blue building in the back. They have been out there cutting all the debris up. I have noticed that. She came in for a demolition permit. I remember Ken was there at the time, and it was just hard to get a hold of her. So any questions, she wasn't at the meetings, she was out of the country.
She was traveling.
And so it was very hard to get sort of discussion. At one point, we talked about just salvaging some of the architecture, because it has the old lodgepole, construction, it's balloon construction. It's got some pretty cool features when you look at it, saying, well, maybe we'll salvage some of that as a learning lesson. We actually met on site with her contractor, John, used to be on here, John
Cole?
Parnam, Joe Barbo, the building inspector, and we actually went out there and talked about ways to reuse that. And she had an estimate to basically take off that addition in the back, make it 2 stories, and reuse the front. And the cost estimate at the time was like $120,000. That would have been it. She didn't want to incur that cost, and so then she just abandoned any further discussion of it. So there is precedent for trying to engage her on that. It's a matter of getting a hold of her. So sounds like Emily's had the same experience with her.
A lot of letters go to the PO box and are unreturned, so, but I made progress last week. We got a phone call, so that's a little baby step, but.
Okay. Is that it? And we'll move on to the next agenda item, adjournment. Do I got a motion?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second, anybody?
Second.
Got a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We'll call this meeting at 9:30.